This is not a story. This is a warning. Across America, there are places where the nightmares never end, and the truth was buried with the dead. Tonight, we open another door. Welcome to the American Nightmare. The first report in this case begins without warning. A rural Michigan road after midnight. No traffic, no houses nearby. Just a strip of pavement cutting through tree lines and farmland. A pickup truck moves through light fog, headlights pushing a narrow tunnel into the dark. Then something steps into the edge of the beam. The driver slows automatically, expecting a deer to bolt across the road. But it doesn't move like a deer. The shape is upright, tall, still. For a moment it stands at the edge of the ditch grass, angled slightly toward the truck as if it's aware of it. The vehicle rolls closer. The figure does not run. Instead, its head turns slowly, following the truck as it passes. The driver doesn't stop. But in the rear-view mirror, just before the fog closes in again, the shape is still there, standing upright in the ditch, watching the taillights disappear. Large sections of rural Michigan go quiet after dark. Not empty exactly, but quiet in a way that makes long drives feel isolated. Roads stretch through farmland and forest with very little light between towns. Houses sit far back from the pavement, often hidden behind tree lines. The first confirmed roadside encounter happened along one of these roads. The witness had just finished a late shift and was heading home shortly after midnight. It was a route he knew well. 10 minutes of farmland, 2 turns, then a wooded stretch before reaching his driveway. The night itself didn't seem unusual. Cool air, thin fog forming in low areas, the steady sound of tires on damp pavement. Then he noticed movement near the right shoulder. His foot eased off the gas instinctively, expecting to see a deer step out. Instead, the headlights revealed a tall shape already standing in the ditch. Not rising, already upright. At first, his brain tried to place it as a person, but something about the proportions didn't fit. The shoulders appeared too high, the posture too balanced. The legs were set wider apart than someone casually standing would normally stand. And it wasn't reacting the way a person would react in headlights. It didn't step back, didn't shield its eyes. It simply remained there, angled slightly toward the road, watching. The truck slowed to around 20 miles an hour. The headlights reached the figure more clearly now, but the fog and glare kept the details uncertain. What the witness could see was mostly outline and movement. Tall, broad across the upper body, the head slightly forward from the shoulders. For a moment he considered stopping, still trying to force the shape into something normal. Maybe a hunter. maybe someone standing near the road for some reason. But the longer the truck rolled toward it, the less those explanations made sense. Just before the truck reached the ditch, the figure turned its head slowly toward the vehicle. Not startled, not sudden. A controlled movement, as if it had been aware of the truck long before the headlights reached it. That was the moment the witness felt something change. Until then, he had been trying to understand what he was seeing. Now he just wanted to pass it. He kept the truck moving. As the headlights slid past the ditch, he caught the clearest glimpse he would get. Still mostly silhouette, but enough to understand the scale. It was standing just off the pavement in the grass, and its shoulders were nearly level with the hood of his truck. Not towering, but unmistakably large. More unsettling was how stable it looked, balanced easily on two legs. He accelerated once the headlights cleared it. The road ahead opened into farmland, darker and empty. Only then did he glance into the rearview mirror. At first he saw nothing but fog. Then the shape appeared again in the fading beam of the truck's tail lights. Still standing in the ditch, still upright, watching the vehicle leave. The witness didn't slow down again until he reached the turn toward his house. And later, when he began hearing quiet reports from other people in the area, people describing something tall seen near roads at night. One detail from that moment stayed with him. The figure had never acted surprised. It hadn't run. It hadn't even shifted away from the road. It had simply stood there, like it already knew the truck was coming. Before we continue, if you follow stories like this, real encounters, unexplained sightings, and documented cases, consider subscribing to American Nightmare. We release new investigations every week. Now, the roadside encounter you just heard wasn't the only report. Over the past few years, similar descriptions have appeared across several rural counties in Michigan. The details change slightly from witness to witness, but the pattern is familiar. Quiet roads, tree lines, late night, and something tall standing just beyond the light. The second encounter in this case happened much closer to someone's home. The witness lived on a rural property surrounded by mixed woods and open field. A gravel driveway ran from the road to a small house, with a barn and tool shed sitting farther back near the tree line. The woods behind the structures were thick enough that even during the day, parts of it stayed shaded. At night, the area became almost completely black. The witness had gone outside shortly after midnight to let his dog out. The yard was quiet. A single security light above the back door cast a pale circle across the grass, leaving most of the property in darkness. The dog stepped out ahead of him and moved toward the edge of the yard. Then it stopped. Not barking, not running, just standing still. The witness called for it once, assuming it had caught the scent of something in the woods. The dog didn't respond. Instead, It slowly backed toward the house, staying low to the ground. That was when the witness noticed movement near the tree line. At first, it looked like part of the darkness shifting, something tall between two trees. He stared into the edge of the woods, waiting for his eyes to adjust. The security light didn't reach that far, but there was enough dim spill across the field to outline shapes near the trees. And that's when he saw it. A tall figure standing just inside the tree line, not moving, not stepping forward, simply standing between the trunks as if it had been there the entire time. The witness said the height was the first thing that stood out. Even at that distance, the figure looked large, broad across the shoulders, long limbs hanging loosely at its sides. It wasn't positioned like someone hiding behind a tree. It was standing in the open space between them, watching the yard. The witness remained near the back door, one hand still on the handle. The dog pressed against his leg without making a sound. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, the figure shifted. Not toward the house, just a slight adjustment of its posture, as if redistributing its weight. The movement was controlled and balanced, more like a person adjusting their stance than an animal preparing to run. The witness felt a sudden certainty that the figure was aware of him, not just aware of the yard, aware of the house, aware of the light, aware of the two of them standing there. He called for the dog again, this time quieter. The dog didn't hesitate. It moved straight past him and back into the house. The witness followed immediately, closing the door behind them. From inside, he stepped toward the kitchen window that faced the yard. The security light still illuminated the grass near the house. Beyond that, the field faded into darkness. The tree line remained a solid wall of black. He stared out for nearly a minute. Nothing moved. Eventually, he convinced himself whatever he had seen was gone. But just before stepping away from the window, he noticed something near the edge of the light. Two trees at the corner of the field. And between them, for just a moment, a tall silhouette shifting deeper into the woods. Not running, not scrambling through brush, just moving calmly back into the darkness. The witness locked the doors that night. He checked the windows twice. And the next morning, when he walked the yard in daylight, he found something that made him pause. Along the edge of the tree line, in the soft soil near the grass, were several impressions in the dirt, large, deep, and spaced farther apart than a normal walking stride should have been. The prints disappeared after only a few steps, as if whatever made them had entered the woods and simply stopped leaving evidence. The third encounter in this case happened less than a year after the roadside sighting. Unlike the previous reports, this one didn't begin with someone noticing something in the distance. It began with the sound of movement much closer than expected. The witness lived along a narrow county road bordered by heavy woods. His house sat about 30 yards back from the pavement, with a gravel driveway running between two lines of trees. There were no street lights nearby. At night, The area was almost completely dark except for the headlights of passing vehicles and a single motion light mounted above the garage. It was shortly after 2 in the morning when the witness woke to the sound of gravel shifting outside. Not loud, just a brief crunch, like something stepping slowly across the edge of the driveway. At first, he assumed it was a deer moving through the yard. That wasn't unusual in the area. But the sound came again, heavier this time, measured, not the quick scatter of hooves. He got out of bed and walked toward the front window that faced the driveway. The motion light hadn't triggered. Outside, the yard was still. The driveway stretched away in a pale strip under faint moonlight before disappearing into shadow near the trees. For several seconds he saw nothing. Then movement appeared near the far end of the driveway. Something stepped partially into the open. At first his mind tried to interpret the shape as a person standing near the road, but the height was wrong. Even at that distance, the figure appeared tall enough that the shoulders rose above the lower branches of a small roadside tree. It stood just off the gravel, partly in the grass, angled toward the house, still, watching. The witness didn't move. He remained just inside the window, barely breathing, waiting for the motion light to activate. It never did. Instead, the figure shifted slightly forward, and for the first time, it moved in a way that revealed something about how it traveled. The upper body leaned down. The long arms dropped toward the ground. For a moment, the figure lowered itself onto all fours. Not clumsily, not like something collapsing. It looked controlled, deliberate, as if the posture was simply another way for it to move. In that position, the scale of it became even more apparent. The back rose higher than the hood of a typical car. The limbs were long enough that it crossed several feet of gravel in only a couple of quiet steps. Then, just as calmly, it rose upright again. The movement was smooth, practiced. The witness felt the air leave his chest. Up to that point, he had still been trying to convince himself there was some explanation. But people don't move like that. And no animal he knew could stand the way this thing stood. The figure paused again near the middle of the driveway, still angled toward the house, still within view. Even through the dim light, the witness could sense something unsettling about the posture. It didn't look confused. It didn't look curious. It looked aware, as if it knew exactly where the house was, exactly where the window was, exactly where he was standing behind the glass. For several long seconds, neither of them moved. Then the figure turned away from the house. 2 long steps carried it back toward the edge of the trees. When it reached the shadow of the woods, it dropped briefly onto all fours again and disappeared between the trunks. The motion light never triggered. The yard fell completely still. The witness stayed at the window for several minutes afterward, scanning the driveway and tree line. Nothing returned. But one realization stayed with him long after that night. Whatever had crossed the driveway hadn't been wandering. It hadn't been startled, and it hadn't been running. It had moved through the property the way something moves through an area it already understands. Quiet, controlled, and completely comfortable in the dark. Individually, encounters like these are easy to dismiss. A shape in the fog, something standing near a tree line, movement at the edge of a driveway late at night. But when the reports are placed side by side, the pattern becomes harder to ignore. Each witness described something tall, something upright, something that didn't behave like a typical animal. The sightings didn't happen deep in wilderness either. They happened near roads, near homes, at the boundaries where woods and open land meet. And in every case, the figure wasn't running, it wasn't hiding, it was simply there, watching, then leaving when it chose to. Michigan's forests cover thousands of miles, stretching through farmland, wetlands, and quiet rural roads where the darkness settles in early. Most nights those woods remain silent, but every so often someone driving home late or stepping outside under a security light realizes they are not as alone as they thought. And for a brief moment, something standing just beyond the edge of the light is watching them too. If you follow cases like this, unexplained encounters, rural sightings, and the stories people hesitate to tell, subscribe to American Nightmare. We release new investigations every week. Until next time, stay aware and stay safe.